The Mistveil Clash Bash season has actually begun, and it's been going on for quite some time. I wanted to go over a little bit about the rules of the new Clash Bash season, just changing some stuff up and showing you guys that, and what we have planned for the future of it. Our previous Clash Bash season was actually done in games of best of 3, and that happened all the way until the top 8. And then in the top 8, we also had best of 3 there as well. But this time around, we are simply doing best of 1 games in our matches. We also are making sure that we are making our matches known to our opponent immediately. There is not a just find an opponent and try to play against as many people as possible. We actually have a bracket of a leaderboard and people who are winning and losing these events. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go over those later on in a different video. But I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about a game that I personally had, my very first game in this Clash Bash season for part the Mistveil, in which I go against my opponent, Nathan. That's right. Me and Nathan are going up against each other once again. And this time we're going to go and battle it out. I am not on either of the heroes that I was on last time. I am instead going to be playing the OG Dash, and my opponent, Nathan, is going to be on Olympia. Let's go ahead and check out that game and see what went down. All right, the game has officially begun. I won the die roll here. And again, I'm on Dash and my opponent on Olympia. I have decided to not speed up this gameplay footage. I feel like you kind of miss out a lot of it, especially with the deck that I personally am playing. And I want to make sure that I'm able to get my thoughts out as quickly as possible. So with my opponent on Olympia, having the pretty normal suite for Olympia, they are on Hatchet's Olympia. My Dash deck is a very heavy, aggressive boost Dash build. You're going to see really, really quick that my entire suite of play is just come in with an absolute insane amount of damage and expect my opponent to block it out and give me cards from their hand, because on top of it, I play a bunch of cards that make my opponent's armor very difficult to block with and almost unusable. So I feel like it's going to be a nice little tech into this, but right now we're obviously only going second, so we're going to go ahead and block out some stuff here, make sure that our opponent doesn't get as much damage off as possible, and we get to utilize some new cards. Olympia did go ahead and put a wager on that Hatchet of Body, so they did end up getting the agility token and a gold, which works out super great for them. But obviously that is Olympia's plan here, is to try and utilize that 1 card. Really, it's kind of like 2 card, 9, and keep that coming, right? Keep on the wagers and so on and so forth. And so what I have here is my item that I started with was in fact a hyperdriver, which means I'm going to get an extra resource pretty much every turn. Right here, I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to play the Heart and Cross Trap into the Scramble Pulse, but it's far too early for me to use equipment. I don't really want to do that right now. So I play the Scramble Pulse. Scramble Pulse does a really awesome thing in which it says that your opponent's armor, it blocks for -1 defense during this combat chain. So if your opponent's looking to block with armor, especially in Clash where most of the armor really only blocks for 1, having it block for nothing now means that if your opponent doesn't want to take damage, they are going to have to block things out. So I went ahead and I pitched that blue. That blue ended up again becoming a 2 resource after the hyperdriver went off, which means now I'm able to come in with this panel beater for 5. If they ended up blocking with any armor, probably just the headpiece here, it would have gotten an additional +1, but we got 2 cards out of their hand. We got to keep an arsenal. We're pretty much good to go. They hit me with a lead with speed. They're still going to be able to get a absolutely insane turn here with 5 damage coming in with the Hatchet of Body, and then they'll be able to get 3 damage off of the Hatchet of Mind. So again, that kind of, with that agility token that they had made during their previous turn, this is definitely a very great turn for them to just take a little bit of damage and then come back with a very consistent amount of damage in regards to these axes. I love me a good axe warrior. I think that Hatchet's Olympia does have a very, very good place in the format. But we're going to see whether or not I can overpower my opponent here again. I'm actually just going to go kind of crazy because at this point I have to. That Scramble Pulse is then going to come in for 7 because I did pop the Goliath Gauntlet and the Heart and Cross Strap, as well as the fact that I did pop the Hyperdriver gets another thing there. So I have 1 free floating resource there because I did boost. And the reason I did this is mainly because I only had 1 blue and I had more 2 costs in my hand. So I wanted to make sure I was able to use this entire hand and really come in with a ton of damage. So Scramble Pulse is coming in. My opponent didn't block the way they wanted to. And sometimes when this happens, it ends up resetting the entire thing. So they only block with 2. I'm then going to come in with more damage. I just dealt 5 to them pretty much off that block. And the best part is, as it's shown, my opponent cannot block with their armor effectively here. So that's only going to block for 1. So they're not going to even bother blocking with it at that point. I then get to come in with even more. I'm going to come in with a Lay Waste here. This one can't be defended by equipment at all. So very, very good. I'm not going to boost here because there's no reason for me to keep boosting, and now I'm dealing 5. So we did 7, 6, 5 in the matter of 1 turn. That's presenting an absolute ton of damage in a low health format. And with my opponent not being able to block, it really does put them in a very, very interesting situation in which, do they keep a card in their hand or do they block out a whole bunch and try to fatigue? It's a very interesting situation. I think Dash is very, very susceptible to fatigue just because she utilizes a card in her deck every single time she boosts. So she's going to run out of deck a lot faster than every other hero will. And in this situation, I'm trying to figure out if I want to utilize this Underloop in my hand for anything and make that happen. Looks like we're just waiting on a little bit of lag. Sometimes Talishar doesn't end up working out the way we want. And there ends up being just a tad bit of lag on the end of our opponent. So I'll go ahead and skip ahead and show you guys what it looks like after our opponent reconnects. All right, we're back in it. They go ahead and they react to this Lay Waste with a Sink Below. So they're going to use that second card in their hand. Now they're only left with 1 card. Now granted, that 1 card being a blue or a yellow does mean they still get to come in and attack for a whopping 5, which isn't bad. But it's a cash-in. Cash-in Olympia. Now that's the good stuff, right? We love to see that. Cash-ins, I think, been a staple in this build for Nathan for a while. And being able to just utilize that gold for 2 cards, you really don't end up losing anything. So Hatchet of Body is going to come in for 2. And then they do have the agility token, so they are going to go ahead and attack with the Hatchet of Mind. And I'm not going to block here, obviously, because I'm trying to essentially race my opponent. And this is the time in which I end up having to have that happen. Boom Grenade is super big into this. I don't love having to play it, but Boom Grenade into this forces my opponent to block in a way that is incredibly good. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to throw out some stuff. They're going to have to block this. If they don't block these cards, they will be taking a whole lot here. I still get to come in with at least, I think, what is that, 10 more damage after this. So almost entirely threatening the Boom Grenade in the worst possible way. So they're going to get all this armor block off here while they can, because I do not have anything stopping them from blocking with armor here. I'm going to come in with this Underloop. Underloop is going to be for 4. Sorry, not 5. It's going to be coming in for 4. On hit, go to the bottom of the deck. My opponent's going to block it. And then I'm going to play a wonderful Zipper Hit. Now, there is a looming 4 damage if I hit at all on this. And therefore, my opponent is going to go, well, you know what? I'm just not going to let you have it. And now the Boom Grenade's going to go away. They don't have a turn, and we just get to do it all over again. This time around, though, we do have a Teklo Core. Now, I'd love to play the Teklo Core, because Teklo Core does mean that it allows us to kind of really have a more powerful beginning to our turn. You essentially remove a steam counter at the beginning of your turn and you get 2 free floating resources. So I like it a lot. In this situation though, we definitely still just want to push as much damage as possible because they're at 6 and we're at 5, and their armor doesn't really block for nearly anything right now. Prize Galea is the only thing with a block value on it, and we don't really care a whole lot about it. If we remove cards from our opponent's hand because they have to block, that means that we end up winning these trades very, very well. And that's just what I like to see. I like to see these trades happen. So looks like they're going to go ahead and sink below this. Now, obviously, D-Reacts do very, very well into dash because they just block super efficiently. But luckily, the breakpoints, all they're going to do is leak a little bit of damage. So it looks like they're just going to try and maybe filter some stuff in their hand. We're going to go ahead and boost this Fender Bender. Fender Bender, if it's defended by equipment, it will get a +1 for each defending equipment. So if they did want to put that Prize Galea in front, they could, but it wouldn't matter. And then go ahead, just end with the Teklo-Core, and I'll see what comes at me, right? They have a very good opportunity to do powerful stuff here, right? 5 is not a great place for me to be at as far as this is concerned. And drawing into the Spark of Genius, it's a great thing to block with if I can't use it. I don't think this game is going to go to the point where I can use it, but my opponent's going to hit and run. Now, this is a situation in which I have to figure out whether or not this is going to be, a lethal turn. If I block, then they possibly have an Iron Song response. If they have an Iron Song response and they use it here, then it is going to be essentially worthless, and I'll be able to block out the other one efficiently and still come for damage. But I'm going to block this Hatchet of Body because I don't want anything to happen there. Another thing I'm looking out for is Up the Ante, the Olympia specialization. That can very well pump something up from anywhere from +1 to +3, and also wager them a whole bunch of tokens. And so again, I want to make sure I'm effectively doing this. The reason I block here is because In the Swing is a card that exists, and if they hit In the Swing in that one, I would have definitely failed. Now here, I do have the 2 floating resources, so I get to go ahead and come in with a wonderful, easy turn of 0 to 60. 0 to 60 is good. I'm trying to possibly keep the Scramble Pulse here. I might use that 2 float to come in with a Talishar, if I recall correctly, because again, just more breakpoints. These lead with speeds that they have in the deck do only block for 2, so you do want to make sure that you are utilizing them as best as possible. Now here they could just block with 3 and keep 2 cards in hand, because that's really, really good. I don't believe they have any other D-Reacts left, but it looks like they do have the Take It on the Chin. That's very, very good for them. So they get to block out a little bit of that damage, and then they get the Agility token. So this is going to really help out on their turn, and I just need to make sure to live. I end up getting a Penetration Script, which is just not super great for me because it doesn't block. So I have to figure out how I'm going to navigate my turn coming up. I have some very powerful, can't be blocked by equipment cards. They're all in really, really interesting breakpoints, and I have the resources to play these cards. But if I just don't block anything here, I could lose to Up the Ante. I could lose to any attack reactions is where warriors really do shine. So seeing something like this, you definitely want to make sure that you're just respecting those. So I'm checking graveyards, seeing where they're at. I know there's an In the Swing already in the grave, and there's an Iron Song response in the grave. So I'm not super worried about this first hit. I'm worried about the second hit significantly more. That is where a lot of that value is, because you could Blade Runner this. You could do a bunch of stuff to give that Hatchet of Mind +1. But I'm just going to go ahead and block it out, just prevent damage as much as possible. If this happens to be an Iron Song response, then it is what it is, and it's not the end of the world. But the reason going to come in, I have to block this out too, because if I don't block it out, I'm just like super sad about it, and it's not going to be a good place. But they're at 1 and I'm at 5. So theoretically, this does mean that any of my breakpoints now guarantee 2 cards out of their hand, and that is just like insanely good for me. So I'm really trying to see whether or not I need to risk if that is a attack react in their hand. And I just don't know that it is. You know, you have to be sure in these situations. And I imagine it would be if I don't block and they attack react, you know, they have an up the ante in arsenal and they pitch a blue, that's going to come in for 6 and I'll die. But if I'm able to block here and I just block out with something that blocks 3, I'm still able to send something fairly okay at my opponent. Even if it's a you know, a 4 attack, it's still presenting that break point, especially with outpace not being able to block equipment. So there it is, right? There's the up the ante. They did have the blue in hand, which means it's going to get +3, and they'll wager all those tokens. So if I didn't block there, I definitely would have died. So you had to block. And then on my turn, I get 2 free resources on my turn due to the Tekla Core, which means I can go ahead and I can start by playing Scramble Pulse, which will have their prize Galea block for nothing, which is very, very nice. And then we can always go ahead and power through and get that outpace out by pitching the penetration script, or I could always go ahead and do other stuff too. But we're going to go ahead and pop out that outpace. They're going to have to block because they can't block with equipment there. And then I'm just going to swing my Talishar at them for another. So it's going to take 2 more cards. Going to take away their Galea. So now they only have 1 card in hand, but they do have an agility token. So this is pretty bad. In their situation here, they're in a very, very good spot. What I do here, though, is I use my Cogworks head to put a payload red onto the bottom of my deck. The reason I do that is because payload is kind of my out, right? Dominate is very, very, you know, it's hard to block out, especially now that I know that they've used all of their, you know, their D-reacts to block out a whole bunch of stuff. I think they have another Take It on the Chin, but not entirely sure there. This is going to be rough because I do have, you know, I need to make sure that I'm able to work with this. They're able to pitch cards to gold, which allows them to just draw pretty much a brand new hand off of a blue, which is really, really strong, mind you. And now they're just going to try and make sure that they can get the most damage out of this. Gallantry Gold is a great tech here because it'll just go ahead and give everything +1, which will make it harder to block. That Hatchet of Mind will come in for 4 as opposed to 3. But looks like they end up just playing the Goblet of Blood-Run Wine, and then they pitch a cash in, utilizing the agility that's there. This is 2. I have to block it or I die. I'm just trying to make sure what stuff I have in my hand in order for me to actually utilize next turn. I have 2 1 costs, a 2 cost, and a 0 cost. The blue is going to help filter into a lot of stuff. I'm out of Tekla Core, so I don't have Tekla Core stuff available for me, and I have a Scramble Pulse in my arsenal. So no reason to use any of the equipment value anymore because they don't have any more equipment to really block with. So at this point, I just have to block as efficiently as possible and hope for the best. So in this situation, I do plan to come in for at least you know, a decent amount of damage here. We've got Zipper Hit for a 1 for 5 boost. I am running out of cards in my deck pretty quickly though, and I think this is the point where my opponent's probably looking to just fatigue me, because fatigue is just like the best way to do this, right? But I'm going to go ahead and just keep presenting breakpoints until I can't anymore. This is the last time I can swing with Talishar. It is officially broken after this attack, so I can't use it anymore. And there is that red payload that I put at the bottom of my deck. There it is. And in this situation, all I need to do is boost and then have enough to pay for a payload. And that's where they don't have really anything on their end. They're out of cards. They'd use their whole hand to block. And we go ahead and we're going to take this W here, because I'm going to come in with 0 to 60. And then I'm going to boost it because I do have cards left in my deck. So theoretically, I can boost. Everything in my deck is a Mechanologist card. So I'm trying to figure out what the best route is here. I can always go ahead. I boost the Scramble Pulse. So that way I can go ahead and get a boosted card onto the field. They're going to go ahead and block. Blocking 3 feels a little bit better in this regard. But then I'm going to payload, come in for 6 dominate. They've got no armor left, no D-reacts, and I take the win as my very first game. So that was our first game of Dash into Olympia. I've been tinkering around with the Dash build for a little while now, and it's definitely a lot of fun. She was a lot of fun to play in Commoner, and she's still a lot of fun to play in Clash. Very, very much so a bursty deck. You want to get everything out one at a time. Just make sure to sequence everything right, get a whole bunch of free resources at the beginning of your turn, and just pump out damage over and over and over, and really just overpower your opponent. And then that payload really comes in for a great dominate. That Cogworks head, while it doesn't have a block value, that steam counter does come in handy if you are looking for something like that. If you have a kill shot spell that's in your graveyard that you need back in your deck, you need to get that back in there. Payload is a way to close games towards the end here, and most of these games do get pretty close down to the wire. So waiting for your opponent to hold off on all of their D-reacts, and once you know that they're all gone, you can go ahead, get that payload into your deck, and try for game. So that was our first game in the Part the Mistveil Clash Bash. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's a little bit more of a bursty situation where you get to check out the aggro game into many things, but I like this hero a lot. Is it going to be my main hero if I make it to top 8? Maybe. I do like how she plays. I've always been kind of an aggro enjoyer, but it is definitely, it's rough, and if anybody out there is playing Fatigue, kind of just lose to that. So you gotta hope for the best. This has been super fun, and obviously we have more games coming as League goes on, so if you do want to check out more of these wonderful Clash Bash League videos for the Part the Mistveil season, you can always go ahead and do that by pressing the like button down below. You can also subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and if you really, really want, really want, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think about the Clash Bash, about the format, what heroes you'd like to see deck techs for, and just how I can better make your viewing experience, because at the end of the day, it's going to sound cheesy, but I'm here for you guys. So if you want something, you just let me know. But thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to become a channel member and support this channel in a more monetary sense, you can do so by joining up here. There's, we have wonderful members that help support this community, and I'm always very, very thankful for that. We have 3 tiers you can join into. Every member gets member-only videos at least once every other week if I can help it. And then also on top of it, there are emotes and loyalty badges for the channel that you guys can flex when I'm live. So thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate your support more than you will ever know. And continue having fun in the flesh and blood. I'll see you all in the arena. Nerd out.